Great. So it's 5 p.m. now. I think we can start now. So thank you everyone for joining. We're very excited to have the Student Action webinar, and we have great speakers sharing their firsthand experience and different groups involved, so different youth and different students can connect with actions happening here in South Florida and how we can grow the movement together. So today we will have speaking the Climate Reality Project with Nicole and Sila and a few other members from the Climate Reality Project. We will also, and they will be sharing their divestment campaign. So that's how they're trying to get the funds, the endowment funds from the university out of fossil fuels, and they will explain more how they're doing it and what their campaign looks like. So we're very excited for that. And then we're gonna have Dyanna, and she will be sharing how she's helping high school and middle school integrate more racial justice into their core curriculum. So thank you, Dyanna, for joining us. And then we will be having members from 350 South Florida Youth, the youth group. So they will be sharing the actions they've been doing and how different youth can get involved, join, and connect and be part of these growing youth groups and youth leadership. And then we will have speakers from the Divestment Coalition. So this is a coalition happening here in South Florida with different groups, some of which 350 South Florida, Sierra Club, Broward Climate Alliance, Rethink Energy. So all of them are part of a coalition, and we will be sharing all of the actions that we're planning on divestment. So, and at the end, we will finish with an open discussion. So if anyone has any further questions, comments, wants to connect with each other, we're very happy to see lots of participants and lots of youth leaders. So without further ado, we will hand the mic to our first speakers, the Climate Reality Project. So thank you again for joining.
Yeah, thank you for having us. My name is Brian Baker from Climate Reality. And I don't know, Luke, you want to start it off?
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Luke. I'm also from Climate Reality. Do we know who's going to, am I going to share the presentation?
Trying to get
Nicole.
it. Yeah.
Or Nicole, you got it?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. 1 second. Can everyone see this? My screen? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
I'll present. Awesome. Wait, it's from slide 1. There we go.
So yeah, we are Climate Reality Project, and we are running a fossil fuel divestment. So our main focus really right now is, why is the fossil fuel industry a problem? And I'm sure a lot of you guys probably know, but I mean, it is becoming a dying industry in the United States and across the world, and it's not very sustainable, and it's not environmentally friendly either, with the coal and the pollution that it produces. So it raises a lot of red flags going into the future. And as a lot of you may know as well, CO2 is being released into the atmosphere faster than at any time in at least the last 66 million years. And I don't know if you guys have seen the graph, but it kind of looks like a hockey stick, such as this one right here. And as you can see, like right around World War II and after, the CO2 from burning fossil fuels really shoots up, and that matches up with a lot of the warming that we are observing across the globe, really. Here's a graph of the top 10 cities at risk from sea level rise. And well, sea level rise in 2070. And as you can see, Miami is the #1 for the exposed assets, which is not a good thing. And you can see it's about 3.5 trillion US dollars, which is a lot. So it's something to be worried about. And then the fossil fuels industry and science denial. A lot of the fossil fossil fuel industries knew about this problem back even in the 1970s, where they hired some very smart scientists and big scientists to find out how these fossil fuels were playing in warming. And they found out that there was a negative effect and that it could be a problem in the future. But then they were actually paid and told to kind of spread lies or pick data that was showing not these bad things that could happen, just so they could continue with their business. And that is becoming an issue now. And as you can see, since then, billions have been spent with shareholder money on climate lobbying and investment in denial and stuff like that. So here's a plot of the global energy subsidies. As you can see, the fossil fuels is 36 times greater. So it really shows the power that they have with the government and the subsidies that they're getting from the government. So ideally, we would like to lessen that and increase the renewables to a greater amount going into the future. And we could do that through divestment and stuff like that. So here's another graph of the global wind energy capacity. And as you can see, there was not much until around the 2000s. And then it shoots up pretty exponentially, relatively quickly as well, which is a good sign. And it actually reaches around 600,000 megawatts of power, which is a lot. And if that were to continue, we could actually power much of the global grid with this type of energy. So it's something to really look into. And it's a good way, if we can get out of fossil fuels by divesting, we can start looking into more things like this. And along those lines as well, the solar panel installations. And you can see this one took off a little bit later, but it is increasing a lot faster. And this one is very important for South Florida and Miami specifically, because we have a lot of sun year round, intense sun too. So that could be a major industry for us if we ever can divest and hop on this train. So here's a little graph. It only goes up to 2017. If we went out farther or more recent, you would see more, but these are the US coal plants that have been retired or announcement retired. And one interesting thing that we found with this graph too is that a lot of these places that closed down, if you look at why, a lot of them stated that divestment had some sort of play in their canceling. So we know it works and it does have an effect. So we would like to continue that.
Yeah, thanks, Lou. So just a little more about the kind of divestment history and why we're pursuing it at Miami is so fossil fuel divestment is just the exact opposite of investment. So as it's defined, the action or process of selling off subsidiary business interest or investments, usually with the intention of positive social change. And in the past, it's worked. So in apartheid South Africa, there was a huge divestment campaign, and that actually worsened the reputation of the companies that were divested from, and it worsened economic conditions in South Africa, and positive social change happened. So there's a blueprint for how this can work successfully. So yeah, the fossil fuel industry today has power and influence everywhere. It's very ingrained in our lives, and they sponsor all sorts of events we see all the time. They're paying politicians huge amounts of money. So it's really hard to dismantle that type of power and influence they have, but divestment is one way to do it. So divestment stigmatizes the fossil fuel industry. It revokes their social license, so it kind of calls them out on a very public stage about what their activities are doing to even public health and just the world. And it weakens their political influence, and obviously it takes away their investments. And these are just some of the divested institutions around the world. A big one of note is the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, which is a huge fund and divested a massive amount of money. And other universities in the US, and this is something we're using to talked to our treasurer at Miami about is that the UC system, the Smith College, Yale and Boston College have done partial divestments just to show them that other high quality institutions around the country are divesting and that Miami could be a leader in this area.
Well, thank you, Brian. So in terms of how this all applies to UM and what's at stake at UM, we have reason to believe that tens of millions of dollars are invested directly and indirectly into fossil fuel companies. And what's also at stake is the University of Miami's reputation. We show that we stand for what's right as an institution that prides itself on being at the front lines of climate science and all of that kind of stuff. And I think we'd be one of the first Florida colleges to really fully divest if we do make that commitment. So we could lead the way in our part of the country. And also what's at stake is just the future of the climate, the impact and the role that the fossil fuel industry plays in society and on our climate. So, yeah. And exactly what we're calling for is we're calling for UM to immediately freeze any new fossil fuel investment in the endowment, as well as current fossil fuel divestments, and fully divest from these companies, including a lot of things, including public equities as well as corporate bonds. And within 5 years is our goal right now. And we've been talking to our school's treasurer about the feasibility of all of that. Yeah.
So thank you, Nicole. So here we're going to talk about some of our strategies that we've used so far. So the first thing we've done is research on the topic. It's really important. Many of us at Climate Reality didn't really know what divestment exactly consisted in. So we started doing our research and started understanding better what it meant, and also look into how much the school was actually investing in the fossil fuel industry. And after that first step, we reached out to the treasurer and shared with him our plans and our campaign. And we also wanted to get some confirmation of those results that we had found. And so that's when we first met with the treasurer.
And another little important thing is just we made sure to try to understand our audience, the types of people we're hoping to mobilize. And in this case, it was our faculty and students to be the ones to show support and engage in activism. And UM, for example, has a particular type of political culture, and we had to take that into account before we took action, because schools like maybe Harvard and Yale are super politically involved, and a lot of students are willing to do pretty dramatic things to show the administration that they're in support of divestment. So we knew that wasn't necessarily the case at UM, and we sort of ran with that approach. And also understanding the people you're hoping to make the change. So in our case, it was the university's administration and the investments committee. It's important to sort of frame your arguments in ways that might not necessarily appeal to you as much, but would appeal to the people who you're trying to make the change for. So in this case, proposing the financial incentive for divestment, there's a lot of evidence that divesting from fossil fuels has a lot of long-term benefits, and yeah.
So what did we do next after we got those first answers from the treasurer? So we decided to make our campaign public. That was about 1 semester into the start of our campaign. So we started last summer, at the end of last summer, so beginning of the fall semester, and that's when we also went to the treasurer and talked with him, but we didn't really make it public until the beginning of this spring semester, when we started talking about divestment with the students, faculty, staff. We reached out to faculty and staff who may have had experience, not with divestment specifically, but with like the treasurer and the administration on other fights they've been trying to pursue with the school. And there were multiple types of answers from the faculty and staff, but one advice is don't be discouraged by those who tell you that it will be very hard or maybe impossible to achieve what we're asking for, because in the end we've realized that it might actually not be as hard as we first thought it would be, but we still need to keep the pressure. So we also started petitioning at the university. We were tabling at first, and then we moved to the online petition because coronavirus happened, so we couldn't table in person anymore. But petitioning is actually a great way to raise awareness amongst the student body and faculty and staff as well, and also get support from them, because many people just don't know that the school is investing in those type of industries, and they're pretty surprised when they find out. And we've had a lot of students wanting to get more involved with us and wanting to help us achieve this. And then another thing we've been doing are endorsements. So we've been asking faculty, staff, other big actors on campus, and now we're starting to reach out to community partners and other organizations in Miami for endorsements. So they would show their support to this campaign. And yeah, it's kind of an addition to all the support we can get and show the school that it's really an important thing to do. And one last advice that we want to give is to keep good relationship with the school's administration, which we have done so far. So as long as you can, try to work with them and not against them, because in the end, they are the one to make the decisions. So that's important to keep. So right now, we have 900 signatures on our petition. There's the link. If any of you want to sign, it's open to anyone since it's online. The most signatures we get, the best. We have about 5 to 6 faculty endorsements from but we're keeping asking and so on. We've had multiple discussions with the university's treasurer, and they've been pretty optimistic and giving us hope. It seems that the school wants to do this and even wants to do more than this, more than just divesting from fossil fuels, and actually take actions that would align with the values of the school and so on. So they will be talking with the investments committee about fossil fuel divestment in October. It was supposed to be now in June, but considering the situation, coronavirus, they had other matter to talk about this month. So they will be talking about this in October, and hopefully it's going to be positive for us. But in the meantime, we'll keep the pressure up. We'll keep petitioning. We'll keep talking about it as much as we can. And yeah, I don't know if Luke or Brian, you two want to say a little bit about what's going to come next now that you two will be the presidents of Climate Reality next year.
So Luke and I will be co-presidents next year, and kind of as Phil was saying, we're really trying to get our petition to have a lot more signatures by the end of the next semester, especially before they meet in October. It actually gives us a little more time to build up kind of a resume of faculty endorsements as well as signatures from students and staff on campus, especially with a lot of new freshmen coming in, and just kind of keeping the pressure up, keeping meeting on with the treasurer team, and that's our plan now. Yeah, would you have anything to add?
Yeah, pretty much that, and also just continuing to kind of educate the people and spread the awareness so people understand what we're pushing for, especially now with coronavirus. We've seen how the fossil fuel industry isn't the strongest, and it has its problems, and it's a little different now with a totally different economy as well. So right now might be like the perfect time to be divesting. So we want to do more research into that and understand that, and hopefully help people understand why we're doing this more and spreading awareness, and also just getting out into the community like this and talking to you guys and hearing what you guys are doing and all of that stuff.
Yep.
Thank you very much, guys. That was very, very interesting. And I'm sure that some people in the audience might have some questions. So if anyone in the audience wants to ask anything to the Climate Reality Project, you can either write it in the chat box or just raise your hand and speak up. Okay. If we don't have any questions, we'll continue with our next speaker. And at the end, there will be open discussion. Oh, so there's a question. I don't know if somebody wants to take that from Scott Lewis. Do you have any faculty sponsors?
We have endorsements. I wouldn't really say we have like sponsors, or we at least don't call them sponsors, but a lot of them are from the ecosystem science departments.
Yeah, and we're also working to reach out from more than just like the sciences to more people like in the business schools and the arts and humanities, so we can get everyone involved in this, because everyone has their different perspectives and they're all important.
Paula's asking for the link. If one of you could share it in the chat, that would be great, so we can
Yeah,
all...
we can put that in the chat. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you sharing all of your experiences, and hopefully you can stick around for the discussion, and yeah, we can all connect and ask more questions. So thank you again. So now we will continue with our second speaker, Dyanna. She is a native from Miami. She's currently living in New York, so thank you for joining us. She graduated from Gulliver Prep in 2015 and from NYU in 2019, and has a BS in communications. She works in Telemundo now, and working in the television industry, she realized how the majority of the workforce is not well versed in anti-racism and the climate crisis due to the lack of understanding in their education system. So that is why she is currently working for petitions and to help lower, middle, and high schools integrate these ideas in their core curriculum. So thank you very much for joining us, Dyanna, and I'll pass you the mic.
Awesome. Hi. So thank you so much for everyone at UM. That presentation was really amazing. So I graduated college last year and I just started in the workforce. I'm 23 and I realized being thrown into it, and it's really scary, you guys will all be fine, but it's terrifying. Being thrown into it, you realize how one thing everyone has in common is throughout college, we learned so many different things about anti-racism and things that fall into microaggressions and different ideas like that, and how that also is incorporated in everything, including climate justice. So when we began to deal with these dual pandemics, both COVID and now we're moving back more into Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, everything that's been occurring, it really helped me realize how much I've learned outside of school and in terms of all these issues. And then I thought more and I realized almost all of it was outside of it. Because I learned everything very much like overt racism and don't litter, essentially was the basic for both of those things. So the main thing that I want to talk to before I go into what we're doing with the petitions is the idea of activism and being an activist. There's this misconception that you need to have this giant 50-page resume of all these protests you've gone to and everything you've done, but at the end of the day, the meaning of being an activist is just talking up and speaking up for everything that you believe in, especially if it has to do with political issues, social issues. So everyone here is an activist, and you can consider yourself that, no matter, even if this is your first time speaking or joining in on this. So the main thing is, don't be afraid to speak up. That is one of the biggest lessons I've learned, especially coming out of college where it's so easy and we have all these groups to talk about it. It's a little harder when you move into the workforce and everything like that, but there's always a way to do that. Social media helps a lot. So moving on to the petitions that were mentioned before. So my friend Karen is going to help me discuss it. We're going to talk about it together because her and a group of my alumni from Gulliver Prep, which is in Coral Gables, near Kendall, it's next to UM. Essentially, her and some alumni came up with this petition to talk about how the core curriculum at Gulliver, the electives, and just the entire culture kind of needs to accept that a change needs to happen. And a little background about Gulliver. It's a private school. It is pre-K through 12, so I went there my whole life. So I was able to experience the entire education system there. And while they did a great job at exposing us to racism and different ideals and all of that, I realized the diversity was a little limited. And that's very strange for people who I meet out of state because they think, oh, wait, but everyone's Latino there. A majority of your class was Latino. I'm like, well, that's the issue. Diversity isn't just people of color. It's different types of people. And a majority of the Black students were actually on their first athletic scholarships. And there were very few that weren't. So, and then on top of that, there were maybe a handful of Asian Americans. So realizing that when I went to college and realized, oh crap, there's so many different types of people and from so many different types of places, and I only survive, I know literally everyone from South America and that's it. So my alumni decided to put together a petition talking about all that. And I became a part of it. And the way I was introduced to it, it was in its first stages, and I realized that the idea of the core curriculum changing wasn't the biggest aspect of it. People were kind of afraid to, it was kind of like, we included electives, they included the idea of seminars and all these amazing ideas. And so then I decided to become part of it because the more I thought about it, the more I realized that anti-racism can exist in any subject matter. It's not just history. And one of my peers from high school reached out to me and we had a conversation and she told me, actually, I learned a majority of anti-racism and climate justice and all that from my English classes, not even my history classes. And then that's it. So then the more you think about it with COVID and everything, anti-racism needs to be included in biology, biomed, especially. In every single field, there's a reason for it to be involved there because my biggest take on the idea why it should be included on biomed is the idea of weathering and the idea that not all Black Americans, Latinos, and just people of color have the same access to healthcare as the white population. And it's a big issue, and obviously I can get into that, but it would take forever because it's a whole institutionalized issue. And the main way to deal with that is to make sure that everyone that's going into the workforce and eventually having those jobs is aware of where it comes from. Because if you're not, then what are you going to do? You're just going to say, well, I didn't say anything racist and I'm not a racist, so I'm doing what I can. When the reality is we have to be anti-racist and not just racist. So the more I thought about it in Miami, anti-racism is very important to climate justice. It's a huge part of it because especially with the sea levels rising and when you think of the redlining that occurred, which is when neighborhoods back in the day would draw a line and would mark it as red to the unfavorable real estate properties and make sure those were only sold to people of color, lower class. And I have a few links I could totally share about from redlining maps in Miami from the 30s. It's bizarre, and it tells you why and who isn't allowed. And like one of the reasons that something is redlined is because there's not enough white families and things like that. And so the redlined parts the more I looked into it, I started comparing them to the flood maps, like the flooding areas in Miami. A lot of them are flooding areas. A majority of the flooding areas are what used to be redlined areas, meaning people of color are the majority there. And another thing I realized is that when it comes to even just air pollution, that normally affects Black Americans more so because they're the ones who live near the factories. They're the ones in the red line areas who live near all these areas have the most air pollution. And this is mostly prevalent in the United States and the UK. So when I heard about this event, I looked more into the structure of it, the organization. I realized that these petitions should also include both racial justice and climate change in conjunction with each other. And I think that's the greatest idea, because people would see this and immediately think, those are two different things. Those are two different things to fight for. But at the end of the day, everything's integrated. So I'd like to open up the floor to my peer, Kieran, and see if she can join in.
Hi, thanks.
There she is. So she's the one who initially started putting this together with a bunch of my peers, and she can go through it. And another thing that we had in common is that a lot of students from other places reached out to both her and I about how they could start their own petitions for their own high schools and their own middle schools, about how they should change the curriculum and how they should change the way they spend money and what groups, and a way to diversify their schools. So I'd love for her to tell you how she started this. And she also put together kind of like a cheat sheet for sharing these ideas with different schools, which is essentially like how to do what we've been doing. And it's really easy. So take it away.
Okay, thanks so much for that. Yeah, so quick thing is, I'm Kieran. I'm a rising sophomore at Yale. I've gone to my high school I went to was Gulliver. I was there for like 8 years, and I was like reflecting on my entire high school experience, and I realized that literally everyone there was not anti-racist at all. Everyone would just like propagate it and never would stand up because they didn't know how to like defend any of like the casual racism that was everywhere. And so I at first was like scared of the idea of like being complicit in anything, because it's obviously like a lot to be like, oh my God, am I guilty of like, you know, not standing up? And it's like a hard pill to swallow, but also if we like pretend like we haven't been, then we're just like denying like people like their voices and like their rights. So I just had to like make this petition and like start talking to people, because I realized like I didn't even like know how to defend people who were who were like victims to all that, but also like people who use the N-word. Like I didn't know how to stand up to them. So we all have like some role to play in it if we benefit from like, you know, white supremacy, which we like probably do for white passing, and that's the thing that I had to come to terms with. So anyways, without further ado, I'm gonna share my screen and show you this toolkit that I made. So the first thing that I did was I reached out to Black alumni and students at my school about how their high school experience was, because I had some sense that it was like pretty racist there, but it's also so important to like take into account their perspective, because now like that I've heard from like Black alumni that I'm working with, it's way more traumatic than I ever could have imagined. So, and it's also important to make sure as an ally you shouldn't be like speaking over a Black student you're working with. So I just did that by making sure that Black alumni were also major signatories on our policy sheet, by making sure that I was, you know, making sure that they were comfortable with like how much they were sharing, all of that, just being a decent human being, which I'm sure you guys are all capable of doing because you all are so like involved in this. So I worked on a policy proposal, and I'll show you what that looks like. So it's a really big document. Basically, it has like 12 points that we wanted our high school to enact. So training employees, including on-campus law enforcement regarding equity, increasing recruitment of Black students, et cetera, hiring more Black teachers, mandating classes regarding the history of racism. I'm going to share this document with you guys on the Zoom chats, because I don't think I need to go through everything one by one. But what was really important that we did after we rewrote this policy sheet, what we did was we spread it around literally as much as possible. Like I posted on Facebook, Instagram. I went to like my senior group chat that I hadn't talked in for like a year, and I had to like, you know, talk to everyone, like spread it. We got like 700 people to sign off on it, which is literally like really awesome, because it showed me that there was more solidarity and awareness to like the racism than I thought before. So yeah, we just spread it around a bunch. And then what we did was, once we had gotten the document with the policies and with all the signatories, we sent it as an email to the high school administration. And what I did, like, just to up the stakes a little bit, was I CC'd the entire faculty directory. So like 700 people I literally CC'd, and I just like exposed the high school. It was really scary, but also really important, because if you don't up the stakes, the administration will probably just like want to sit and do nothing and just like, you know, pretend like they're doing diversity when they really aren't. So it's important to raise the stakes and have them know that you want to see at the table, but not like the kids' table. Like you are an actual person who deserves to be heard. So I also have a possible email template here for how you can phrase that. And then, so what's happened now is we had a meeting with the administration once I blasted them with this policy document, and they're like really receptive to it, literally only because they're scared of bad PR. But I mean, even if like their intentions aren't like in the right place, we're still really happy because they are going to hire a director of equity and inclusion. They are going to increase Black recruitment, and we have to like still enforce all these things that they claim they'll do. So we're gonna be on this alumni advisory board is what they told us, and we're gonna have like monthly check-ins with them and make sure that they're doing all this. So I really encourage you guys to think about how this would look like for your high school, because obviously everyone's experience in high school is a bit different and racism comes in many forms. But it's really important to really like not be scared of doing this, because I literally started off so small, and if I had like realized it would have gotten this big, I would have been scared to do it, and then nothing would have happened. Like literally the first step is just to start and just to see where it goes, because along the way I've met so many alumni, not just Black alumni, but anyone of color, and they've had this like terrible experiences at my high school that I never knew about, and I've finally been able to give them a voice. And that's like literally, that's like a baseline of like decency. Like that's me doing like what I should have been doing long ago. So I really encourage you all just to think about what you can be doing better to combat the racism that you've seen in your high school. And yeah, that's my spiel.
Yeah, so essentially, like when I saw that was being shared around, I reached out, and we had never met before. We literally had never met before, and we started talking. And the important part, and something that I found the most important, was how open everyone, like I was texting her specifically, but how open everyone was to suggestions and understanding like, hey, I could be wrong, but I want to listen right now. And realistically, that's the first step that can, and it's so easy, and it's also scary admitting that maybe everything you've ever thought in your life has been wrong. But it was really nice because I don't know if you saw in the doc, but it was faculty and parents too, and a lot of these parents went to our high school, like went back in like the 80s and stuff. So all of these signatures kind of show what a difference it makes. And then another thing that I found very important is just keeping up with it, because a lot of times, like she said, is that the faculty is just gonna, not the faculty, but the administration is just gonna be like, yeah, like we'll do whatever, because they don't want anyone to hear about it. They don't want it to make the news. They don't want it to come out, because for a private school, at least money. And so they'll say whatever they can say and do the bare minimum, but then that's the point of staying, like keeping up with it and keeping up with everything, which is why I think that board is so amazing. And I started to become a part of that. But yeah, there are people all over the country right now trying to talk to their schools and have no idea how to start. So this toolkit that Kieran showed me was amazing. And I've been sharing things like that and helping people. Like, for example, there's a school in Virginia that I've been helping out with to help put together their own petition that has to do more with their school and their experiences. So I'm really just we're promoting this because it's such a small thing, but the more people are a part of it, the easier it is. And people want to listen, especially now. People are trying to listen for whatever reason it may be. So yeah, that's what we want to say here. Yep.
Two things I want to say really quickly. So another thing I did to up the stakes, I just was like thinking about was, so in addition to having that email with like the policy proposal, I wanted to like humanize the experience a little bit. So I had collected a bunch of people's experiences with like racism and prejudice, and I got all of these like small stories and blurbs, and that was a really evoking thing to do, because now like the entire faculty and the administration was face to face with the actual like, you know, implications of not being anti-racist. So that's a really, really good touch, that not even a touch, but it is a good strategy. But beyond that, it also is important to hear people's perspectives and give it like the platform it deserves. So I strongly recommend doing that as well. And also I'm going to put my email in the chat or my phone number. I'll put both. If you guys want to think about doing this in your high school and you have any questions about literally any part of it, I'm more than happy to help, because I want to see more high schools doing this. And I have seen like a good trend of it happening in other high schools, but just honestly, like the more the better, because high school can be so toxic. So it's important to like address it.
Yep, I think that's all we really have to say. If anyone has any questions, just feel free to shoot them at us. I'll put my email and my phone number down here too. Just literally feel free to talk to us about anything, because it's really something that not only is like high school so toxic, but it's harder to learn these things and be more open to, you know, being wrong or whatever when you're older. And if you learn this when you're younger, and not even just high school, but even in middle school, if they approach the idea with, instead of just don't be racist, instead of they approach it with anti-racism, like actively do something against it. Don't just sit there and like not say something wrong, but actively do something. If that's ingrained in your head, that's makes it so much easier when you're actually part of universities and the workforce. So we really would love to see this everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dyanna and Kieran. That is really inspiring, and I'm sure that a lot of people will want to reach out to you. And if people want to send their emails in the chat, so we can all stay in the loop of the student action webinar, and we can all connect. And whether it be a divestment campaign or curriculum change, like Dyanna mentioned, these things are intrinsically linked. So thank you so much. That was really very inspiring. Thank you for sharing. So now we have our next group of speakers is 350 South Florida Youth, the youth group, and this is a self-autonomous group. It's youth-led, and we have, a lot of amazing youth leaders. And if you guys would like to share with the group, welcome, and thank you for being here. So I'll pass it on to Lalo and the group.
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Lalo. I'm a member of 350 Youth. I'm gonna share my screen real quick. Okay, so as Nicole said, we're an autonomous group. We started off as a project from the larger 350 South Florida, but we do work independently. We rely on them just for support, inspiration in terms of like the activities we can do and what we endorse. And our main goals are just to increase youth advocacy, youth awareness on the climate movement. And we do this not only through, we do this mainly through activities, two of which we'll be discussing now. And also just, through those activities, we hope to promote and put individuals in positions of leadership where they can not only help create the activities, but facilitate them and that way become more involved. So we started around a month and a half, 2 months ago. Since then, we've been able to put together one event, and that is an art event. The theme was racial justice and climate justice, so drawing the connection between the two. So we prefaced the entire event with this PowerPoint. And I started with this quote: "There's no thing as a single issue because we don't live single issue lives." So from there, we went on to just quotes detailing the connection between the two, between racial justice and climate justice, because the art that we wanted to create was either on climate justice specifically or racial justice or a combination of the two. We just wanted to make sure that people were aware of the purpose of the art, what exactly we were promoting, the kind of thinking that we're promoting. So then we gave examples of what exactly people's art can look like. And then again, tried to end it with drawing the connection between the two. And so that was the only event we've had thus far. We chose climate justice, racial justice, because it's something that is obviously very pertinent right now. Our members felt very strongly about it, and we were able to get a lot of engagement. The event itself wasn't the best turnout, but our members we had, and those in our membership, they helped create the art, whether they were in the event or not. So we did see a lot of engagement in that sense. And then the other event that we're planning on creating now, hopefully within the next few weeks, is a climate webinar. Again, part of that will be climate justice and racial justice, the interconnection between the two. And then another part of that will just be general climate science. So we understand that racial justice, climate justice, really anything that climate is interconnected with, that it can seem overwhelming, having to enter a webinar, enter a space where you're not just talking about climate, even though that's potentially what you thought you'd be discussing. So we'll be opening it up with a speaker from ACE, and Alliance for Climate Education, one of their staff members. He'll be discussing like just general climate science, climate 101 essentially. So making it, providing an environment that's easier for people to manage, that's more manageable, just to not scare people away with too much information at once. Then from there, we'll move on to a speaker, John Paul Mejia, who's a local South Floridian. He's probably one of like the most well-known youth climate advocates, and he'll be talking about that interconnection. So with the movement that's going on, and just in the moment right now that's calling for this kind of education, we want to make sure that we still focus on it, but at the same time, we want to make our events easier for people to join. So again, not trying to overwhelm them. So we're just trying to be mindful of our audience, who those people might be that might be interested. And in this case, in this webinar, it's people who ideally haven't been introduced with the movement at all. So giving them a platform and an opportunity where they can take that first step in engaging in the movement. And that's pretty much it in terms of our events. Again, we're pretty new, but we like what we've been able to do so far, engaging our members and focusing not so much on increasing membership, but doing the most with what we have. And yeah, especially in this moment, since all our members are pretty much passionate, or very passionate about what's going on right now with Black Lives Matter, and just the interconnectedness in general of climate change. We're really trying to take advantage of that and make it available for anyone who isn't familiar with it, who doesn't see those relationships as directly, making sure that we provide opportunities for that to be seen, for that education to take place. But yeah, that's what we've been able to do so far. And yeah, I think we could just take questions now.
Oh, thank you so much, Lalo. If anyone has any questions for Lalo or for 350 South Florida youth, or how to get involved or connect, you can write that in the chat or just raise your hand.
To answer that question, South Florida is ideally where we're trying to acquire members, but we do have someone, for example, from Argentina. She's youth, but she's very involved in just the climate space in general. So we couldn't say no, obviously. We're not looking to deny anyone who isn't from South Florida area, but especially now, just because everything's digital, but moving forward, we will try to keep it within South Florida, just because we'll ideally be having physical events. So it makes more sense to keep our base here.
So there's another question in the chat there from Logan.
To join, I guess it's just to ask to join. We have a WhatsApp group and then an email list where we send information and where we filter all our ideas through. And then from there we have weekly meetings. So we meet on Fridays typically, and we discuss in depth what's gone on in the WhatsApp group. But yeah, if you could just leave your number, we can add you. Yeah, there are both high school, college students. It's mainly high school. I'm like a rising senior, and the people that I reached out to, like my friends who are interested in climate change, they're also all high schoolers. And then the people they reached out to are also high schoolers. So we have majority high school, but we do have some college students.
Thank you, Paula. And Lalo, correct me if I'm wrong, but the intention is under 25 years old, right? So
yeah, I should have made that distinction. We are keeping it to under 25. And the reason for that is that 350 South Florida generally appeals to an older audience. And then understanding that we really wanted to be able to appeal specifically to a younger audience. That's why we're capping it off at 25. And yeah, Pembroke Pines is fine. We'll definitely add you.
awesome. Yeah, the idea is to grow the movement. So even if we're in different places, like Dyanna's in New York or we're here, we can all connect, and we have the advantage of connecting virtually. So geographical locations aren't a limitation. So are there any more questions for 350 South Florida youth? Okay, great. So now we'll move on to our last speakers, the Divestment Coalition. which Climate Reality Project's also a member. 3 Days at Florida is. Broward Climate Alliance, Sierra Club. Scott is here with us, and Eric, also members of that coalition. So I'll pass on the mic, and we can share a little bit of what the coalition has been doing and what it will be doing. So that's another way to get involved. I'll pass it on to you, Scott.
Hey, great. Welcome. Good to see everybody. You guys have some wonderful ideas, and just excited about hearing all the different projects that you've got going. So, Nicole, I don't know if Eric was going to do a little presentation here. I'm not sure. Was he going to do something? I wasn't sure, but I'll just give you a little bit. I mean, we're a relatively new group. What happened was, some of us were interested in this issue of divestment going back to the group's presentation. And then we sort of got together before the Earth Day events, the Earth Day Live kind of presentations, because they spent one day sort of talking about the divestment issue, and we thought we would get some materials together on that and distribute them and ask people to really pledge personally to divest from banks such as JP Morgan Chase that really do a lot of support for fossil fuel projects. So we thought that would be really important. If you know from your 350 group, Bill McKibben, has been a big writer about the importance of doing this kind of divestment. So we thought we would try to ask people not to pull their money out of, banks such as Chase, if they had that in there, and then find alternatives to that, like University Credit Union and University of Miami, to put their money in that maybe supported some local projects. So if I can, I'll just share a screen to show you sort of what one pager that we had, if I can find the right one. Yeah, I'll share that, and you could just sort of look on that. There's some divestment recording material. I think Nicole was organizing that and talking a little bit about divestment work. And I'm sure some of the people on this call know how to do that sort of thing. And so, we shared this kind of information to people and asked them, there's a divestment pledge here that I get my money out pledge. And if any of you are interested in a project where you want to encourage your classmates to pull their money out of some of those banks like Chase or Bank of America, you can use something like this to click on and ask them to divest. So we passed that around, and now we're kind of in phase 2 of this, is actually sort of looking at institutions and seeing, well, what can we do to encourage divestment from these institutions? We feel like this is a really important tool to push the climate change issue along, and to make people sort of think in terms of the fossil fuel companies, that they don't get supported by the bank infrastructure. So we're working on different projects with that right now. For example, looking at Broward County and how they may have money in that sort of thing. So we're hoping to take on other projects. You guys are inspiring us to think of some other ways that we might push this divestment issue too. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I just mentioned, just because you're making the connection today, there was a wonderful article, and I guess I can put that in the chat box here, called "Racism is Killing the Planet," and that was published actually in the last week in Sierra News, and it's a fantastic article if you're looking at the intersection of these two issues. And this is a really important article, I think, for looking at that and letting people know about that.
Thank you, Scott. Eric, are you there? Would you like to share something?
Yeah, I'm here. It's Eric from 350. Not really sure I have anything else to add. That was a pretty great summary of divestment in general and what we're up to. It's great to see some of what the youth groups are doing. That's fantastic. I just posted your petition on my Twitter page for Greenpeace Miami. So I'll definitely be sharing that as well, and some other platforms. Yeah, so, you know, as far as institutional divestment, yeah, we've been looking at local municipalities or possibly some of the big foundations like the Miami Foundation and the Knight Foundation, you know, seeing that fund a lot of efforts around South Florida. But you know, that's going to be an ongoing project, so we'll let you know what we see. One option is folks, you know, pick a local municipality and, you know, and target their pension fund, you know, and see, you know, make sure that it's a community that, you know, is concerned about the environment, like say Miami Beach or Coral Gables. They've already done a lot of sort of climate resolutions. We can start making sure that, you know, they don't have their employees' pension funds are not being invested in fossil fuel companies, for example. Or as I said, some of the big foundations around South Florida that donate to various nonprofits and arts groups, etc. That would be possibly even more impactful. So if anyone wants to, when's the next meeting for
that? We're having a meeting actually tomorrow, so I'll send around a reminder.
Okay, great. So yeah, join that meeting if you'd like to get in on that discussion. It's at 12:30.
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe I'll see if I can find a link here to the Zoom session and post that. We're gonna hang on another minute or two, and I'll see if I can find that.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Scott and Eric. So yeah, that's a little bit of the summary of what the Divestment Coalition is, and I think after this webinar we have a good idea of amazing and inspiring actions that are happening here locally. So I see some people have included their emails in the chat box. Thank you. So we can all stay connected, and if there's any ongoing activities or meetings or ways to get involved, we'll be sure to have an email chain possibly, so we can all stay connected and support each other. And thank you everyone for sharing the resources. Very valuable links have been shared in the chat, so those are definitely very useful for students and just activists in general. So we can have a few minutes, we have a few minutes left, and we can have a small discussion. If anyone wants to share anything, ask any question, please feel free to do. And I just want to thank the speakers again for sharing their inspiring stories and experiences, and for everyone for attending. So if there's any questions, I'll open up the floor. Thank you.
I was actually curious about, with the changing school curriculums, do you know how to go about it from the public school level? I don't know if there has been some change done there, or.
I forgot to unmute myself. So no, so since our only experience is our experience, we actually don't have much with that because the school in Virginia that asked me was private. However, I would be more than happy to be willing to work with that, because I have a lot of friends. I actually have one friend who went to Palmetto, who is here in Gulliver, which is a public school. Miami, which is a public school, who is looking to do the same thing. So I'm starting to learn about that. So I can definitely put you in contact with people who are trying to do the same thing with their public schools. And then we can talk about including that in the toolkit, or maybe making a whole different one, because it's definitely a different approach entirely. And it involves obviously like the government and everything. So that would be something really interesting. So please feel free. I put in my email and phone number. If you want to message me, I'm more than happy to work on that with you.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Of course. Wait, I think 350 South Florida. I think you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. But yeah, just to answer to your question real quick, Nicole, I went to to a public school in Canada, University of British Columbia. So it's a little bit different from the US, but we were able to change the curriculum to include climate justice courses. So again, a little different, but pretty much what it entailed was doing a big campaign, creating awareness, petition, creating a referendum, then a town hall to have faculty, staff all at the table and really make it public and known. And then it comes down, like Dyanna said at the end, like they don't want the bad rep. And if you put enough pressure, it works. But the toolkit you sent is amazing. So that really helps to have it step by step. So thank you. More questions? This is recorded, so it'll be public in YouTube soon, in a few days, in case you want to share. Any last questions? Okay, well, thank you, everyone. We really appreciate you sharing, and keep up the amazing work. And if we can support in any way, please let us know. We're all in this together, so thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for putting this together. It was really great to hear about all these different projects.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for joining. And we'll stay connected. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.